So there's this new paper out that's making a pretty bold claim that the entire way we build AI is about to change, transforming from something like simple construction into high art. Let's get into it. So let's start with a really big question. For years, we've watched AI build language pretty much one way, piece by piece. But what if, instead of laying bricks one at a time, it could take a rough block of ideas and just sculpt it into a masterpiece, all at once? Okay, so this is the central idea we're exploring today. On one side, you've got the brick layer. That's today's AI, like GPT. It builds text sequentially, word by word. It's incredibly powerful, for sure, but also kind of rigid. Then, on the other side, you have the sculptor. This is a whole new approach called diffusion models, and they are holistic, flexible, and they can refine the entire text at the same time. To really get why this shift could be so revolutionary, we first need to talk about the current champion and, well, its biggest weakness. Just think about how something like ChatGPT actually writes, right? It predicts one word, then the next one, and then the one after that, always in this super strict left-to-right line. It's literally laying down these linguistic bricks, one after another, to build a sentence. But here's the catch. It doesn't have the full blueprint before it starts. And this is where things get really interesting, because this method creates a huge limitation. Researchers have a name for it, the causal bottleneck. Basically, since the model can only see what it's already written, it has no way to look ahead. So if it gets to the third sentence and has a brilliant idea, it can't go back and tweak that kind of awkward phrase it wrote in the first sentence. It's completely locked into its past choices. This is just such a perfect way to think about it. Imagine you're writing a big essay, right? But here's the rule. Once you've written that first paragraph, you can never go back and edit it. Ever. How would you write? You'd be super cautious, probably play it really safe, and you'd almost certainly miss chances to connect ideas in a deeper way. Well, that's the world these AIs are living in right now. All right, so that's the brick layer. Now it's time to meet the sculptor, the diffusion language models. And this is a totally different way of thinking about the problem. A diffusion model, or a DLM for short, starts with like a rough, jumbled up cloud of concepts. That's our block of marble. And then it starts refining the entire thing all at once. It's chipping away at the messy parts, polishing phrases over here, restructuring sentences over there, until a clear, coherent idea just kind of emerges from the noise. Okay, so you're probably thinking, if this approach is so much better, why isn't it everywhere? Why aren't we all using it? Well, here's the thing. It turns out that teaching an AI how to be a sculptor is way harder than it sounds. In fact, the paper we're looking at lays out this whole gauntlet. 10 huge challenges that are basically stopping these new models from having their big GPT-4 moment. So let's just take a quick look at the whole map here. You can see there's a ton of stuff, from inefficient designs and old school tools, all the way to needing completely new ways of thinking. These are the big hurdles they have to clear. Now, we're not going to go through all 10 one by one, don't worry. Instead, let's group them into a few major themes to make sense of it all. So the first big theme is just raw inefficiency. A lot of these new sculptor models are actually being built using the old blueprints, the ones designed for the bricklayer AIs. And that's a huge problem. It leads to a ton of wasted effort during training. The paper calls it gradient sparsity, which is a fancy way of saying the model is doing an incredible amount of work for very little actual learning. All right, next up, they just don't have the right tools for the job. Think about how we humans think, right? It's all hierarchical. We have a main point, then supporting paragraphs, then sentences inside those. But the tools AI uses today just kind of chop language up into these flat, same-sized pieces. These new diffusion models, they need much smarter building blocks, ones that can actually grasp the structure of an idea, not just a flat list of words. And this one might be the most important of all. They need a whole new way of thinking. It's just not enough to follow a simple straight line, that classic chain of thought. To really be a sculptor, the AI has to learn how to step back, look at the whole piece, rethink its approach, and make big structural changes. That process of self-correction that's at the very heart of what we consider real intelligence. But hey, this isn't all doom and gloom. The paper doesn't just list a bunch of problems, it actually gives us a really clear strategic roadmap for how we can solve them. So let's check out the plan. The whole solution is broken down into 4 main pillars. First, you've got to build the foundational infrastructure from the ground up. Then, pillar 2 is all about algorithmic optimization, making everything faster and way smarter. The third pillar is cognitive reasoning, which is basically teaching the AI these new thinking skills. And finally, pillar 4 is about unifying all of that into one cohesive, powerful intelligence. And inside this roadmap, there are some seriously cool tactics. I mean, we're talking about things like designing brand new architectures that are not stuck in that linear left to right rut. Or check this out, active remasking. This is a technique that would let the AI spot its own weak points in a piece of text and flag them for a do-over. It's essentially teaching the AI how to be its own editor. How cool is that?
So, where does all this lead? If we can actually overcome these challenges, what's the big payoff at the end of the road?
Well, the end goal here isn't just a small improvement. It's to fundamentally change what an AI language model even is. We'd be moving away from a system that's really just a super fancy prediction machine, one that's just guessing the next most likely word in a sentence. And we'd be moving toward what the paper so beautifully calls an AI that can scrupulously sculpt the entire structure of thought. Think about that. This is so much bigger than just writing better sentences. This is about an AI that can actually grasp, structure, and refine complex ideas as a whole, kind of like how our own minds work.
And that leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to chew on. For all the amazing progress we've seen with AI, what if we've only been watching the bricklayers this whole time? What if the real revolution, the next huge leap forward, only begins when the sculptors finally get to pick up their tools?